One of the key issues that has arisen in my constituency over some period of time is the persecution of the Oromo people in Ethiopia. I've had fairly extensive consultations with the Oromo community, and in particular 3 representatives from the Oromo community. And I had made a commitment to them that in this place that I would raise their ongoing concerns about human rights persecutions in Ethiopia, and in particular to discuss the ongoing plight of the Oromo peoples in Ethiopia. The representatives that I spoke to updated me recently on the latest developments regarding the Oromo protests in Ethiopia. I've spoken on numerous occasions, Deputy Speaker, over recent years about the Oromo people who have been, according to the Oromo diaspora, newspaper reports, the US Congress, ongoing persecution and targeting of the Oromo people by the Ethiopian government. The Oromos have been staging protest rallies across Ethiopia since April of 2014 against, in their words, the systematic marginalisation and persecution of ethnic Oromos. The immediate trigger of the first wave of protests was a development plan that sought to expand the territorial limits of Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, into neighbouring Oromo villages and towns. Oromos saw the proposed master plan as a blueprint for annexation, which would further accelerate the eviction of the Oromo farmers from their ancestral lands. In light of Oromo protests, the Ethiopian government have used overwhelming force, seen on many occasions, and I've spoken about it in this House, to crush the protests, killing hundreds of protesters and arresting thousands. According to my sources within the Oromo community, the Oromo diaspora here in Australia, in light of the ongoing persecution, on the 11th of February 2018, the youth of the Oromo region launched a new protest and a 3-day market boycott. This drastic economic boycott suspended the operation of businesses and government activities. It was, Deputy Speaker, unlike any other protest in the history of the country. The objectives of this particular boycott were to drop all charges against senior opposition leaders and release all political prisoners without any preconditions, to stop displacing Oromos from their land and intimidating the Oromo people, to stop the war waged on the Oromo people along the Oromia border with the Somali region, using the notorious Somali special forces known as Liu Police, and stop killing the innocent people by the army. The impact of the boycott was felt nationally, as the whole Oromia region boycotted the movement of people, goods and services across the country. Markets were closed down, civil servants did not turn up to government offices, and schools and universities were closed. The transportation system was also brought to complete halt. This boycott was well organised, disciplined, and attracted support from just about every different grouping of the community and the country. As a result of this boycott, the Ethiopian government was shaken to its core within a matter of 48 hours. Consequently, 7 key opposition leaders, including Bekele Gerber, the Secretary-General of the opposition party, was released. Bekele Gerber, Secretary-General of the Oromo Federalist Congress, was arrested in December 2015 after mass protests broke out in the Oromia region over accusations that farmers were being forced to sell land with scant compensation for the plan. In light of the release of key opposition leaders, as well as other prisoners, the 3rd day of the boycott was called off. That resulted, Deputy Speaker, in jubilation across Ethiopia, in particular across Oromia. However, in addition to these celebrations, the Oromo peoples are mourning the loss of over 30 civilians that have been killed in various cities across the country by a special government unit called Agazi. The most callous of these cruelties took place at the Hamaresa camp. On the 11th of February this year, as the boycott commenced, the Agazi invaded the Hamaresa camp in eastern Oromia, where defenceless and displaced people were sheltering. Over 13 people were killed. Other Oromia peoples were uprooted from their homes by the government militia. Unfortunately, Deputy Speaker, as I speak, I'm informed that close to 1 million Oromo internally displaced peoples in Bale, Borona and Harar deserts are exposed to starvation and other human rights violations. These internally displaced peoples are now surviving on help that is being sourced globally by Oromos, including those in Australia. I think our displaced and our Oromo diaspora, Deputy Speaker, believes that the Australian government should consider providing aid relief to the Oromo peoples experiencing hardship in Ethiopia. They've also let me know about something that was pretty disturbing that occurred in relation to Facebook. This was resulted in an online petition which called on Facebook to immediately unblock the Facebook account of Jawar Mohammed, the executive director of the Oromo Media Network and a prominent Ethiopian political activist with over 1.2 million followers. He was able to use Twitter, but not Facebook. According to the head petitioner, Germa Gutema, an Oromo living in Norway, it was particularly disconcerting to see Facebook block Jawar's account at this critical time when the Ethiopian people were campaigning to free all political prisoners in Ethiopia. Jawar, as a long-time and prolific user of Facebook for over 13 years, had a significant role in the effort of the Ethiopian people to free themselves of the existing repressive regime. The act of blocking Jawar Mohammed's account by Facebook violates freedom of expression and breaches the user guidelines of Facebook itself. In the end, the petition called upon Facebook executives to immediately unblock the account of Jawar Mohammed and publicly apologise to the millions of Ethiopian Facebook users who felt that Facebook might compromise their privacy and personal data. I understand, Deputy Speaker, that that Facebook account has now been unblocked. But I would raise in this House, when we're talking about companies like Facebook in social media talking about their freedoms being encroached upon by impending government legislation about encryption or other things, that blocking someone's account who has been using their account for 13 years, and my understanding is not advocating for violent activities but for peaceful protest, does call into question, I think, the capacity of totalitarian governments to influence social media providers. And I think that's an issue that my friend Mike Kelly, the Honourable Mike Kelly, would share with me, the member for Eden Monero. It's something that I think our in committee, the Intelligence and Security Committee, will be looking at. But it's hard for Facebook, Deputy Speaker, to be arguing about their freedoms when they have actively suppressed the freedom on Facebook of someone who was a key leader of the Oromo community without sufficient justification, and coincidentally that block then is removed after the Ethiopian government had released political prisoners. And I think that's something, and if Facebook actually look at this, that I would like them to respond to, because I don't think it's satisfactory. And I ask on behalf of the Oromo community, both here and in Ethiopia, why was this gentleman's Facebook account blocked? And in the view of many of the Ethiopian diaspora here, and the Oromo diaspora here as well, in this country, they believe that there needs to be some answers provided. And so, Deputy Speaker, I'd urge the Ethiopian government, and will continue to rise on behalf of the Oromo community in my constituency and elsewhere in Victoria in this country, to cease the ongoing persecution of the Oromo peoples in Ethiopia. And I will continue to work with Oromo leaders in Victoria and overseas to continue to highlight their concerns. Some, Deputy Speaker, will say that what happens in Africa does not affect our country. That is just not true. I mean, Africa is a growing series of countries that will have an increasing say on what happens in world affairs. And so what does happen in Ethiopia, regardless of how far away people think it is, does have an impact and ultimately will have an impact on this country. And what actually happens to the Ethiopian government, there is a fairly substantial transition that's occurring at the present period of time. We're not exactly sure where that will lead to, but that does have an impact on Africa. It does have an impact on the security of the country. It has an impact on the diaspora communities that are here, and it could have a quite, depending on what the outcome is, a quite destabilising impact on those countries within Africa. So when people say, well, that's none of our concern, it's none of our business, well, it is, because ultimately this does impact on us, and it does have some influence and bearing on us, and I think it is something that I will continue to raise in this chamber.